Hey Doug, I got a quick question.
Yeah.
Are you starting to hold the meetings in person? I saw that they had a conference room, or virtual is still the preferred method.
We have not held the meetings in person yet, but we're looking at whether we should try and have one,
Okay.
maybe the May meeting. So I should have put that on the agenda. I guess the next meeting's on the agenda. We can have a little discussion then about whether we want to try and meet in person.
Okay. Thanks.
Susan, do we have enough for quorum?
Yes, we do. Should I start with the roll call or wait till? Yeah, we have quorum.
Okay. In that case, I will call the meeting to order and we can start with the roll call.
Okay, if you can say here, Doug Murdoch.
Here.
Christine Sakuda.
Here.
Michael Nishida.
Here.
Marcus Yano.
Here.
Benson Chu.
Here.
Joe Kumabe. Senator Moriwaki.
Here.
Eugene Chang.
Here.
Arnold Kishi.
Here.
Garrett Yoshimi.
Here.
Mai Nguyen Van.
Here.
Did I miss anyone? Okay, Doug.
All right. This is just a reminder for everybody. If you are a member of the ITSC, please leave your cameras on throughout the meeting. Next item on the agenda is public testimony. Individuals may provide oral testimony at the meeting or submit written testimony in advance. We did not receive any written testimony. Is there anybody who would like to give oral testimony? All right, not hearing any, so we'll go on to our next agenda item, which is the legislative report. So James Gonzer, who's our legislative coordinator, will give us the report on what's going on in the legislature with regard to IT.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm going to share my screen. And since this is the first time for me doing this, I hope I do it right. I believe this is the correct screen.
Yep, we see it.
Okay, great. Well, the legislature has been fun so far. We're not even halfway through. ETS is tracking 82 House and Senate bills of the. You're not seeing the correct screen, are you?
Yeah.
We can see it. It might be small
Okay.
for some people, but I see it.
Okay, then I'll go on. Well, anyway, there has been 2,721 bills with action taken in 2024 so far. And already,
Excuse me. Thank you, James. Can you please enlarge the screen a little bit? I think in my, at least in the view, the things you had shown up very small. Thank you very much.
Let me try to do what I can.
Thank you.
On
Hey,
that
James,
bottom
this
right.
is-
on
Yeah,
the
James,
screen,
this
you
is
can-
Marcus. I'm not sure if you were showing your if it was like a slide deck or presentation, or what we saw was your Word doc, which may have been your notes. No,
Yes,
yeah.
that's what you're supposed to be seeing.
Okay.
That is okay. You can show that. There's a little slider at the bottom right that will allow you to increase the size.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Try that first.
I apologize for that.
There we go.
There you go. That's good.
Is that big enough?
I think. Everybody
Okay.
okay? Yep. Proceed.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Anyway, of all these bills, 45% have already failed to pass, so the number has come way down. And ETS has submitted testimony on 10 bills. I wanted to let you know just some important time that March 1st is first decking. That is the last day for a bill to pass second reading and be heard, passed, and filed by the final committee in its originating chamber. That's either the House or Senate. And then March 7th is the first crossover, the last day for a bill to pass third reading in its originating chamber, so it can cross over to the other side. So those are the important dates coming up. Effectively, March 7th is kind of like halftime. It's like when everything switches over, so that's like halfway through the session. And I also wanted to share a few of the bills that may be of interest to the members of this committee. HB 2176 HD2, which establishes an AI working group to develop use policies and guidelines. AI is in the front of everyone's minds. HB 2634 HD1, which adds duties and extends the technology services consolidation working group through 2028. We had just presented a report this session, the beginning of the session. SD 2782 SD1 is about language access. It's to develop multilingual accessibility standards and hire a language coordinator. SB 2287 SD1 asks ITSC to develop a plan to enhance the state's mobile app. SB 2516 SD1 is to rename the CIO, Doug, to Deputy Director of DAGS, who shall be appointed by and who shall report to the comptroller. So that's a big change we're following very closely. SB 2526 SD1 extends the dissolution date and asks the Technology Service Consolidation Working Group to assist ETS to determine appropriate data centers or hosting facility requirements based on business criticality level of the system or data set. That's kind of a legislature language. And SB 2780 SD1, which requires the Department of Hawaiian Homelands to complete a report on the feasibility of digitizing its records and create an interactive database software program with assistance from ETS. So we have testified on 5 of these bills, but these are some of the ones we're following that I thought you folks may have an interest in knowing that they're still all moving through the legislature at this point.
I will comment on a couple of these if I could, James. The first one, 2176, and a similar one in the Senate side that are establishing an AI working group. Originally, we're going to set up a regulatory agency in DCCA that would require any use of AI in the state to be approved by DCCA before it could be used. And so we did testify on that, that AI is already widely used in the state and in the state government, and that it's kind of too late to regulate, and that it's going to be changing so fast that making people come in for approval of their applications would just be impossible. So a working group will be established instead to look at policy and guidelines. And this would have affected both government and the private sector. So they would have essentially have regulated AI out of existence, which would have been a horrible thing. So the other one is 2516 was heard by the Ways and Means Committee this morning. So they changed it a little bit to say that the title would be CIO and Deputy Director of DAGS for IT, who would still be appointed by and report to the comptroller. Probably there may have to be some change to that still, because if it's Deputy Director of DAGS, it probably will have to be appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, which is not the way it reads right now. So there'll be some more work on that. One of the things that does is it sets the CIO's pay to the level of a deputy director in a department, which would be a substantial reduction in pay. So it may make it difficult to hire CIOs in the future. But that's a policy decision for the legislature and the governor's office to determine. So those are two. Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of the bills?
Yeah, Doug, this is Mike. SB 2287 SD1. What is this? It says ITSC. Is that the IT steering committee or is that something else?
It is. It's the IT steering committee. So it would actually add a duty to the IT steering committee's list of roles to develop a plan with ETS to enhance the state's mobile application. Now, we don't really have a mobile application. We have a mobile-friendly web series of web pages. So, but in any event, it would be something that we would bring before the ITSC for review.
Okay, thank you.
Hey Doug, can I ask a question on the SB 2287? I'm sorry, 2516. What
Yes.
was the genesis of how this bill came to be?
I do not know all the background. It was not a administration bill. We had the enterprise financial system project that failed last year. Or we stopped it, and it cost about $8 million for what had been done up to that point. And so Ways and Means Chairman Senator De La Cruz decided, whether it was, I assume it's related to that, decided that the CIO should be put in a different position in government. So he was the sponsor of the bill.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to say that, everything goes through a number of hearings. So I would strongly urge that if you have concerns or you have a way of looking at this, I think it was a concern with the $8 million failure and not being able to have some control or oversight of it. And, government organizations have different structures and this was one option. But again, nothing is in concrete in the legislature until the last day. So if you folks have concerns or you have, other options that you can see that what works, I would urge you to testify on this bill as it goes through. So, it's not over until we go to a conference. So I do want to urge you to submit testimony on the bill. On any bill that you have concerns or interest in, because a bill can always be amended as it goes along.
Yes, as it was this morning. So thank you, Senator. James said it was halftime. I like to say it's about the third inning in a baseball game. So we still
there's
have
many more.
3 innings on the House side, and then a couple of conference innings, and then the governor's decision on whether to sign the bill or not. So there'll be more work done on this along the way. So
I do,
please,
as
feel free.
I just urge my constituents, I urge all of you on the steering committee, if you have interest and concerns about technology in the state and how we can operate and get good people to serve the state, I would urge you to read these bills, and nothing is in concrete. That if you see something in any of the other bills, and this one in particular, that you send in amended language or you send in your concern. I tell you, all the committee chairs read the testimony, and you will see if you go to these hearings that we amend as it goes along. We take recommendations from various agencies, and we change the bill as it goes along. If they've got 6 hearings, they change, and then it goes to conference where it changes even more. So I urge you to be on top of these bills. So you only have now, at least you don't have 80 bills, and if you only have about 8. But I urge you to read through them. They change a lot as they go through.
And we will try to send them to you as they come up with our testimony, just for your information. It's difficult because sometimes we only get 24 hours to respond, but we'll do the best we can. Christine.
I do want to make one comment again, as I tell my constituents, is that you can all go and register. We've got one of the best websites and information systems in the legislature. I mean, you go to the city council and I can't follow it, but you can register. And you can say, I want to know these bills. Now you've got bill numbers. I want to know when these bills come up for hearing. And it'll ping you. It'll say, this is coming up for hearing. And it'll give you the agenda. And then you could send in your testimony. And because they do change. We're putting up all kinds of bills every day. So if you put yourself on for these 8 bills, for example, it will ping you. And you don't have to wait for Doug to send you the list. You can just follow it on your own.
Thank you. That's good. But it is very easy to sign up on the legislature website for committee reports for upcoming bills. Christine, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Senator Moriwaki. I have a few questions, and one of them is related to testifying. So ITSC as a committee normally hasn't spent a whole lot of time, discussing bills, active in the legislature. And I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to kind of talk about that and see if, do we consider providing testimony as a committee, or can we provide testimony as a committee? Do we have a discussion here, a little bit more in-depth discussion, in the bills that I think are important to you, Doug, or important to ETS, so we can provide some input through ETS. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or I'd like to hear, from the IT steering committee of how can we be helpful, versus us testifying individually and not, without really leveraging the committee to talk about the bills and how they're important, how they impact ETS and the state.
That's a very good point, and this is an opportunity to do that now, since we put it on the agenda and we've listed the bills here, or we can potentially do it at another meeting. But we can come to a conclusion together on our position on a bill. It has to be done in an open meeting. We can't meet in ones or twos or threes, so that's very important that we do it during an open meeting. And we did previously testify on 2516, which is the Deputy Director of DAG's bill, to consider giving it to the ITSC to make recommendations on this, positioning of the CIO within the state. So that's one position we could take, is that we would allow the ITSC to study and make a recommendation on this, where the CIO should sit. And we could still do that even if the bill passes for next year. So that's a possibility.
Well, thank you. I mean, I in the past, I know that, the CIO, is appointed by the governor and has this kind of dotted line to DAGs, as well as the state procurement office has a board, and there's like many different ways of setting up the governance structure. And in the past, it's been contemplated for the CIO to report to a board with just more kind of accountability than frankly the ITSC has. We're not really held accountable. We advise and, we support, but we're not really a governing board, and so I do think it's worth more conversation just, to help provide clarity around governance for ETS in the state. And so I'd be happy to be, a part of those discussions, and would love to know your, any more insight you can provide, Doug, on what you think would be helpful. I would be open to the ITSC looking at options, but would also like to hear from the other board members. And how do you decide what the best governance structure is? So it's a good opportunity to talk about it.
I can tell you that among the states, I think it's about 50-50 in terms of maybe half of the CIOs report directly to the governor and the other half report to some lower level of government like the comptroller. There are a couple states that have technology authorities. Virginia is one, and so is Georgia, that have been very successful in doing technology and modernizing their states. So the one thing we also know is that if we create a board or a commission or an authority, it would require that each member be appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, and probably would require more regular meetings, like monthly meetings, in order to keep up with, all the decisions that, the committee or the board would have to make. So those are some thoughts on that. I have been very impressed with what the states that have authorities have been able to do. They've had kind of broad ranging authority to get into things that are not just day-to-day IT operations and modernizations. They've had an impact on kind of state level policies. So those have been awesome, but every state, based on its own structure, decides how it should be. So city and county, the CIO reports to the mayor. Actually, that position is going to be open soon, as I understand. Mark Wong's retiring.
Thank you. Would love to hear input from the other ITSC members. And I don't know how we proceed forward, but we're here to support ETS and you, Doug, and how do we support different options available? So it's sort of an open question that I'm thinking about. That I don't really have specific ideas on that yet, but any other feedback from the ITSC that could help, shepherd support on a meaningful governance structure?
Yes, Eugene. Sorry, you're muted.
So this bill, is it a reaction to the recently canceled project, or does it have some other roots that's driving the need for change?
I think it was, I think it instigated it, in terms of who to control and how can we control costs? Because we have a lot of legacy systems, the UI system, this one. So I think that was probably the genesis, and we had in Ways and Means Committee a pretty heavy grilling of OETS. So we had a information briefing so that we could look at not so much the people, but the system. And we actually did come to conclusion that there needed to be changes in the system, the way we do business. But I think that was a very heavy Ways and Means Committee meeting at that time. So I think it spurred a lot of concern. So I think it was, and it probably is a reaction to that. Yeah.
So,
So-
you know, I'm new to this group, so I don't know the history of the failed project. However, when a project is failing and it gets canceled, it could be a sign of good process and strength. It depends on what the root of the problem was. And just reacting to a canceled project and then making a change may not be the right way to solve the problem.
I think general agreement. I think not to get into the weeds on the project or what the process was, but I think it was a cost of the project, and it could have been terminated earlier, but that came out in the aftermath of that hearing was one that we had as an informational briefing with the user departments as well as OETS, and being able to see through that OETS was a staff department and the user department was the DAGs that had this project, and they should have been more involved in scoping the project and monitoring the project, which is now changing. So there's a system improvement as a result, but it was a very costly learning experience that a number of my colleagues were very concerned about. So I think if you look at maybe even look through this 2516, and I think both Doug, OETS and the comptroller have different options, so to speak, on how you could structure it. I don't think anything's wrong with the structure, but again, it was a reaction to a failed project that cost $8 million and went too long without the termination. And I think those corrections are being made, even with the IV&V contract, knowing what the red zone means, that, you've got to really make some corrective action versus, okay, here's the report, you're in the red zone. So, it's those kinds of things, but lessons learned, the costly lessons learned. And I think a lot of corrections are being made to the system to improve.
It is kind of the nature of government that when something goes wrong, a head must roll.
Yeah.
So
Unfortunately, yeah. Yeah.
that's part of the process. So Marcus, did you have something?
Yeah. Hey, Doug, thanks. I think in response to Christine's question about, what we think that should look like, I think that's a larger discussion than probably this forum and this time, right? Being able to go back and have some time to further review the bill as Senator Moriwaki mentions, to kind of see the different counterpoints to it. I think we all recognize that the situation that was presented and the course of action that was taken, and it is what it is at this point, right? And so I think it's prudent to review the lessons learned and make sure that we're not repeating it. But at the same time, I think reacting in a knee-jerk fashion without really thinking through what the outcome will be is detrimental, right? And so I for one would love to have more discussions with ITSC, not just of the governance of OETS, right? And that role and how this CIO is, but also to the broader picture of how we're structured as the IT steering committee and whether or not we're adding value in the way that we envisioned it once, right? And how do we, further, support that or not, right? I think that's the question, that we were intended to be kind of a sounding board in many aspects to your role, Doug, for whoever's sitting in that position, but also to, provide some, in my mind, accountability to all of the efforts that are going on there. But Christine hit it on the head that we get together, we have some conversations, and some of them are very good conversations, but quite frankly, we're not as involved or as engaged as maybe we should be, if the intent really is to be an extension of your office and to provide you with the knowledge and expertise that's on this board, right? So I, for one, would say yes, I think that we need to evaluate that, but you know, it would probably be, you know, in the best interest of everyone to kind of take a look at that. And then, you know, if there is a specific position, obviously we know that you folks testified, you know, and you made your position clear. And I think we can evaluate whether or not individually we want to support that. I would love to, you know, in future things, have bills and understand, you know, your position and the reasoning behind it. And, you know, whether that's an open session and, you know, just trying to figure out who needs to be in there, you know, what level of quorum, you know, how much of that is from a sunshine perspective versus executive committee, you know, type of things. I would like us to have further discussions. Obviously, we're almost to the halftime of this session. So, you know, we're a little late behind for this year, but I think going forward to make best use of everyone's time, you know, it's probably prudent for us to review again. So sorry for the long-winded, you know, comment there, but you know, that's
No,
my
that's helpful. Would you like to try and meet in March to, you know, like first or second week in March to have additional discussions about this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for everyone else here, but I would love to, you know, well, the session is in session, right? I mean, I think it's worthwhile for us to have that discussion and again, you know, understand where the, you know, your office is coming from and for us to be able to express our thoughts on that and then, you know, be able to help support especially as we get later into the session, right? Where we know what's crossed over and what's likely to be heard or not, you know, and how do we help to, you know, support those causes, right? So you know, for myself, yes, Doug, I would love to have that option, but you know, I leave it up to the rest of the committee.
So just for consideration, we're looking, maybe we could hold a meeting the first week in March, which would give us the opportunity to testify or state a position to the House Higher Education and Technology Committee. Joel, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it's a procedural question, I guess. Once we get through that, what is the protocol to submit testimony as a group or as a organization? Is that something that we would maybe write up a testimony and we'd all sign it, or how does that work?
We could do it that way. ETS could draft testimony and let everybody for that March meeting have the opportunity to, you know, kind of recommend changes to it and come to a group decision on what the ITSC's testimony should say based on what we can agree to.
You know,
And
there's two could I just
Yes.
interject here? Because there's two parts, I guess, to the testimony. One is as a group. And as a group, you really need to have this open discussion, I guess, and the bill itself is not too complicated, but it is complicated, right? It's restructuring OETS, basically. It's changing the CIO as an independent reporting to the governor versus moving it to a deputy under the comptroller reporting to the comptroller. So it's a major change, and where the ITS steering committee would sit and how it operates is not really mentioned in that. So I think that the steering committee as a whole, saying how you've operated in the past, what you have done, and what you see as the role and how the CIO should operate has been or has not been effective and what can be more effective. But that's a group decision. On the other hand, there's a second part to it because you all represent different companies or organizations that are interested in government and IT and its future. And that is also a voice that we don't usually hear. And as you go to the House and you go to, is it the higher education or GVO committees? I don't know which committees they're referred to yet until this bill passes. But Doug can give you that information if you sign up on the website for the legislative website. You will know which committees it goes to, and that would also be helpful to have you as your organization as well. So you could do the both. But if you have a perspective from your own organizations, it's really also good for us to hear from you, because we don't usually get that kind of input, which helps us to make a better decision. So there's kind of two things going. I would offer.
Okay, thank you. We will see if we can set up a meeting for the first week in March for further discussions on 2516. And we'll have draft testimony, and we'll send out a copy of the bill as it is after changed by WHAM today, so that everybody can take a look at it. And then if we need to, we'll also send a copy of the current bill, which is sort of current law, which is Hawaii Revised Statute 2743, that has the duties of the ITSC in it for you to review as well, in case you want to comment on that. Even if the bill continues in its current form, this is a topic that the ITSC can continue to discuss and even, ask to have studied. And ETS could conceivably bring in Gartner or somebody to make recommendations on how we could further improve how IT is organized and governed in the state of Hawaii. So that's something the ITSC could recommend as well, that we take a long approach and look at this for next legislative session. So something for your consideration. If it's okay, I will move on to the next agenda item, and we can have more discussions on this. The only thing under the annual report is, I think in the December meeting, we had a discussion of providing a more complete chart for systems under development. Can you go ahead and click on that? So a chart that included the year that the system went operational, the cost, and the annual O&M costs. So there are a couple pages to this that we provided to you with the minutes today. It shows all of the systems we have successfully implemented, and including both major systems and then the ones that are in progress or that we're starting either last year or next year. So it's quite a long list of very important modernization projects that are going on in the state. But we have been very successful in that first bunch of, I think, 21 that we've finished already or that have gone operational. Sometimes a system goes operational, but we continue to work on it and expand it for further use. So some of those in that first bunch, although they are operational, are also being expanded. So those are provided for your information, and there was just something we couldn't put in the annual report in time because we couldn't gather all the data that we needed. Christine.
Doug,
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yep.
Go ahead, Christine.
Thank you. And thank you for putting this together, Doug. I think I might have been one of the ones that asked for the information. And I think it just, further reflects the breadth of responsibility that ETS has to govern or provide input on, to provide oversight on, to provide project management, IT capabilities into it. And so I think it's very helpful to understand the scope. And I know we're going to talk about the IT strategic plan later, but I think it's just relates to what kind of support is needed to support this sort of strategic roadmap for the state, as it continues to move forward. So thank you for providing the information to us.
Certainly. I heard somebody else.
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm not sure what DD and I and O and M stand for, but is this the actual cost or the projected cost prior to the project started? It may be a way to show that, the effort of your team or this area has met the budget. Once in a while, you do have situations where things don't go right, but if you can show that, compared to budget, you hit the mark. I'm not sure if that makes any sense on this chart here.
I would love to have that data, but we don't.
Okay.
We go back and try and dig in for it. DD&I, normally when I look at a project, I look at cost, schedule, and performance. So did it stay within budget? Did it stay on schedule? And did it meet all the performance parameters? And usually we don't meet them all, or we're a little over budget or behind schedule or whatever. That's not unusual. DD&I is design, development, and implementation. So it's the pre-operational work that's done to put the system into place. And then O&M is operation and maintenance. So it's what we pay to run the system and update it, after it's gone operational. So in these cases, DD&I was what it cost to actually build the system.
Okay.
And then O&M is the current operational cost of the system each year. And then if these are actuals from our references that we have, if you go down 2 pages, one more. So these ones that are in progress, we're giving you the projected operational date, the estimated cost for DD&I, and the cost estimate for annual operations. So that will show you kind of what we are expecting, and we will be able to start tracking scope, schedule, and performance on these based on IV&V reports and other information that we have. And then can you go back to the first page? Sorry, I'm scrolling up and down. I want to make anybody seasick, but on the first page, these are systems that are essentially business systems for the state. The department that runs this system that's listed there is primarily responsible for, putting the system into place. ETS provides expertise and resources to help. So we might help with cybersecurity or enterprise architecture or procurement, any one of those things, but the department's in the lead. And if you go to the next block of systems, which is on the next page, these are systems that are primarily ETSs to design, develop, and implement and put into place and run. And they generally are used across the executive branch. So these are ones where we have primary responsibility for the systems that are being run. Okay, I think I see Eugene's question, comment. I think the mute.
Yes, I have a few questions. So on the first block, oops, on the first, okay, on the first block, your O&M costs, those are your budgeted costs?
That is the annual budgeted cost to operate that system.
And are any of those systems underfunded for operations?
I don't think so. I think those are actual costs, contract costs.
Okay, and then on the next block, where you're doing the development internally, it would be helpful for you to track how much of your internal resources are being used to do the DD&I.
Right.
Because I'm sure that you could have used it some other places if you didn't do work on those systems.
That's right. Yep. Most of them are kind of pre-built systems that we're implementing, like Office 365 or Adobe eSign, but there is staff in ETS that's dedicated to running these systems and building out capabilities within the systems to make them more useful in how they operate. So you're right, it would be useful to keep track of those costs. We just don't have it right now.
Right, because I think that customization usually is more work than people expect.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work to configure the systems properly.
And then in your third block, the systems in development, how do you track the variances? In terms of, do you think that some of these are actually going to come in over your estimated budget?
Where we have IV&V assigned, then they normally track variances for us. And so we do know, we have an idea where they're, the DOT Highways Financial Management System, if it is operational by the summer of 2025, will be 2 years behind its initial operating projected date. But I cannot say they're over schedule because right now, or over cost, because right now their intent is to hold the contractor the contract price, which is a fixed price.
Okay, so it was a fixed price, then that's great.
Yeah, generally all of our implementation contracts are fixed price, but it doesn't mean the contracts don't get amended. So it would be ideal for us to start tracking any changes to the contracts that affect scope, schedule, or performance.
Right.
I'm sorry, cost, schedule, or performance. Yeah.
Okay, because that would be helpful because like the embarrassment that you recently suffered, it's hard. I mean, it'd be good to know if those are caused by change orders or by errors in original scoping.
Yeah, and I'm happy to have a longer discussion with anybody on what happened. We did give a pretty detailed briefing to the Senate committee on that, so I'm happy to do that one-on-one. I just can't. Well, no, we could actually do it in front of the entire group in March if we want to as well. But I'm happy to sit down and talk to anybody about what happened. It was it was a vendor that I think fell apart during the pandemic. And it was during the pandemic that it happened. And I think the vendor fell apart. And I think the state also was preoccupied trying to deal with the pandemic and not maybe focused on working on the project at the level of focus that it needed to. So especially the business units were very, very busy reacting to the pandemic, and ETS was very busy running safe travels to try and keep people safe and recover the economy. So it was a bad timing, and I think in hindsight, we should not have started that project when we did. We should have waited till the pandemic was over, but we didn't really know when that would be. So, the decision of the executive committee was to press forward and try and make progress on developing the system.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on the chart? Yes, I see your hand.
I see Arnold has his hand up. I'm not sure if he still has a comment or not, but I have a comment after. Arnold,
Okay.
do you have
Thanks,
anything?
Marcus. Doug, just to amplify Christine's comment about scope of the projects on this list, is there a third or a column that starts to tally or add up how much projects are we looking at? I mean, is this 500 million or $500 million? And because there are a lot of projects with a lot of dollar amounts. So in terms of understanding the scope, I think having some totals or subtotals along the way would be useful.
Yeah. I think I did calculate that the cost of systems implemented is about 350 million, but we can put subtotals on there as well.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Doug.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make one quick comment. I know that in the past, your group and your office has gone into depth to cover a multitude of these programs with the ITSC, right? And we did look at just, schedule variances or cost variances, and even, some discussions around, just overall, satisfaction with vendors and et cetera, right? And, not to run afoul of, procurement, the procurement office and whatnot. So SPOL has some accountability in some of these things and whatnot of how, future projects that bid or whatnot. But in these numbers, one thing that, I'd be interested in is, does some of these are supported by other funds, right? Not just necessarily your funds or, state funds, even at that, with COLEA and some of those others. Do those numbers that are captured here or represented here just the portion of the budgets that you see, or is it in, totality, including other funding sources, including non-state funds?
Right now, they include what the departments are listing in our inventory that we validated with them, by just for the purpose of putting together the table. So it's not specific as to funds, but I do believe they include general funds, special funds, and federal funds that various departments have. So example, You know, DOT Highways has a lot of federal funds, so does Human Services and Health. You know, those three in particular have a lot of federal funds available to them. And things that are built for Medicaid are, when they're being built, are 90% federal and 10% state. So it's the federal government heavily funds those. Unemployment insurance, on the other hand, historically didn't get any money to fund its projects, which is part of the reason their system was very old. But they have received some federal funds this time to help modernize. So that is part of their upcoming development that they've got that we've listed in the second block here as the second item, the unemployment insurance reprocurement.
Got it. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of share for the members that haven't, had some of that historical knowledge, that your office does share that with us, and we have gone in depth in it. Obviously this is not on the agenda for these meetings, but we do cover that, and just kind of understanding that this is not just your budget, right? That's being viewed here. So
correct,
yeah, no,
right.
Thank
These
you.
are anything that where the name is the department there, then it's their budget and their staff, and we're providing expertise, which on this chart is almost everything except for the second page, which are ETS's major systems. Those things are actually in our budget.
Perfect. Thank you, Doug.
That is one of the anomalies we're looking at fixing for the enterprise financial system. So that funding was put into ETS's budget, but it probably should have been put into DAG's budget. So that's something that we're looking to change in, when this project gets refunded. Eugene.
So did you just say that for some of these projects where you have the costs listed, you may not be responsible for the success of the project because of the other departments?
The department is primarily responsible for the success of their project, but we are their partner. But they normally have their own program managers and their own business analysts and their own their own IT staff, and they're working directly with their people and the contractor. Our role in these systems normally is to provide expertise in areas where they don't have it, like cybersecurity or architecture, and also to provide independent verification and validation vendors to watch over the project and check on any problems they're having. And then if they have problems, we'll try and recommend changes. That's another thing coming out of the financial system problem, is that we need to give more guidance to our IV&V vendors about what they should call red in their reports. And I can go into that more detail later on, but basically right now, they sometimes mark things red that then they comment on as being acceptable risks. And in my mind, if it's red, it shouldn't be an acceptable risk. It should be an unacceptable risk where some action should be taken, immediately to respond and try and correct the rating. So things that are yellow, I think, can be acceptable risks. And so that's the guidance we're going to give them, is if you mark it green, there shouldn't be a problem. If it's yellow, it should be an acceptable risk, but maybe you should take some actions. And then red would be an unacceptable risk that the department should immediately take action to, resolve. Christine.
Thank you, Doug. A few questions. One is, I see under starting in 2024, the state EFS system for 60 million. And then the ERP management project, could you provide some information about how they're related or how they're different?
When the state decided to build an ERP back in, I guess, 2010, 2012, it's been a while. There was never a management office that was built to manage everything, all the changes, all the testing, all the updates, all the reconfiguration that needed to be happening. So ETS has managed that through various resources. But a couple of years ago, we decided to actually create a project that may be under ETS or it may be under DAGs. You know, we haven't decided that yet, but we did get 5 positions, and we're going to add it to, I think, 5 positions we already have to create a 10-person ERP management office to manage the ongoing operation of the ERP system, which includes human resources, payroll, time and leave, and accounting and budgeting, the financial management system. So we'll have a permanent program office, basically.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm just reflecting on where it has the IB&V projects. I mean, there is a time in ITSC history when some of the big projects would provide an overview or a status update to the IT steering committee, really just more to kind of have an understanding of where the projects are at. Are there common challenges across the system that relate to workforce development, for example, that we can help to support? Or, you know, so I mean, quite a few of the projects, due to their size, have IB&V, and it's just something else for us to think about as a way of supporting, you know, a successful project implementation. Because I know that the reports are generated, and I'm not really quite sure where they go. So it's for the amount of effort that gets put into generating the IB&V reports and the status, you know, perhaps it's something ITSC can support moving forward. Just wanted to put that nugget out there. Yeah.
Good question. So IB&V reports are created every month. They're reviewed by the department and the vendor, and they can make comments, but they are independent, so they don't have to change them if they think they're right. And they are posted on the ETS website. There's a tab for IB&V. There's a tab for reports, and then there's IB&V reports. And every one of them, I think, that we've ever gotten is on the website. And I think you had a group that reviewed the reports at one time to look for common problems that we see. And the most common problem we see is that the state generally understaffs its projects so that we're not as available as we should be to the vendors. So they're burning money waiting for us to be ready, you know, to work with them. That is the number one problem that we see. But the second problem we see is vendors not wanting to do all of the formal documentation that's necessary during the development of a system. So that's probably problem 1 and problem 2. And I read them all, and we review them all to see if there's anything we can do to help. But I think I know we're writing a new guidance document for the vendors and for the departments to give them guidance on what they should do with the IB&V report once they get it, you know, in terms of things that are red and things that are yellow. So that's a lesson learned for us. The idea of having projects come and brief, I think I actually did that when I was at DHS one time on some of our projects. I think what we're contemplating right now in ETS, in the strategy and governance group, they're working on the idea of having them come and brief you on their roadmap and strategic plan in terms of not just one of their applications, but in general, what their IT plan is. And we're trying to help them work through and develop those in writing right now. We developed some things in our LeanIX system that will help provide written roadmaps and plans for the departments just by pushing a button, really, as long as all the data is there. So that's a new capability we're trying to provide for them for their own internal governance.
Thank you. Thank you. That's exciting. It's interesting to see if, you know, there's so many important projects happening across the departments. The ITSC is one of the few places where we can kind of hear from the different projects and see where there's sort of system-based, you know, opportunities to address and to support that maybe feed into the consolidation that we could support you on, or what gets in there and what doesn't get in there. So again, happy to support those efforts, Doug, and have further discussion with the ITSC about our role in that. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you. We're going to come with a recommendation soon to have them come brief you on their roadmap. Let's go back to the agenda. The next item is the strategic plan process. So I have our governance and strategy group working on, the next strategic plan. So we're getting to the end of our meeting, but if Todd Omura could come on and just give you a quick update on what they're planning to do.
Hey, thanks, Doug. Good afternoon, IT Steering Committee. So to give you a summary update of what we've been doing since the last meeting. Sorry, my name's Todd Omura, IT Strategy and Governance Officer for ETS. So at ETS, we discussed and explored different ideas on approaching the update, looking at other state strategic plans, what they produced in terms of artifacts. In particular, we had our folks, UC reached out to the state of Washington and set up a call with them to review and discuss, how they approached it, how they prepared, who was involved. So that was a really good discussion, giving us insight on what other folks are doing across the country. Throwing around ideas on the facilitation approach, looking at different ways to do it, how and when to involve, external facilitation consultants to assist. Some of you remember we were fortunate to have the help of THG when we produced the first strategic plan. So yeah, looking internally within ETS, looking at other departments who can potentially help with the activity. And, I mentioned THG. Thank you, Christine Sakuda. We've asked THG if we could, and Christine, if we could start exchanging ideas and, on finalizing and implementing our strategy update, our approach. So we're looking forward to that. Per Doug, we're open to all ideas and suggestions from the committee. Though we have an existing plan, and we discussed ideas on updating as Per Doug did that last meeting, we're really open to any and all ideas and suggestions for the project, in particular from the committee. So you can reach out to me or anyone on our staff to do so. And that concludes my update. Any questions?
Okay, not hearing any questions, so I'll just say they're actively working on the best way to go forward with this, and whether they change the plan we have or build an all new plan or work off of our transformation plan that we have, we'll keep you updated. And we're really trying to do radical collaboration where we're talking to the departments and we're talking to the public, and we'll talk to the legislature. So we'll try and involve as many people as we can in the strategic planning process as we did last time. Okay, for the good of the order, I only have one announcement, which is we do have Eugene Chang here, who is a new member, so welcome. I can't remember if I recognized Michael Otsuji when he first came on as a new member from DOE, but welcome Eugene and Michael. And I did mention Senator Moriwaki coming on for the Senate at the last meeting. The next meeting we had scheduled for May 23rd, but we're going to see if we can hold something the first week in March, first full week, which would be the 4th through the 8th, somewhere in there, to discuss the 2021-56, or the bill that talks about the CIO as deputy comptroller. So we'll try and do that. Unless there's anything else, we'll go ahead and call for adjournment. Any objections to adjournment?
No.
Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate all the comments today.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.